there's been a lot of blowback over here on Oahu, Airbnb, VRBO, really, really disruptive of the market. Well, I shouldn't say disruptive. It's really kind of changing a lot of market dynamics. You have neighborhoods that have gone from being quiet, sleepy neighborhoods to essentially vacation rental neighborhoods. Very disruptive to the folks who live there, driving up prices. Scott, what do you kind of, Oahu's been kind of clamped down big time on the whole VRBO and short-term rental. Frankly, right now during the COVID thing, they're deemed non-essential. They're actually shut down. But what do you kind of see? I want to have a conversation between us as what do we see the long-term effect of this? Because I see a lot of negative effects affecting local residents, local prices. What do you guys see on that side of going on with this? Scott, why don't you get started with that, and then Dylan, you jump in.
You're asking on the vacation rental bill?
Basically, well, I don't have a specific bill, but kind of generally speaking trend, what do you kind of see going on with this sort of whole short-term rental, Airbnb, VRBO kind of thing happening?
Well, short-term, there is no market right now. I mean, there's no.
It's gone. It's dead.
And you're not allowed to do it. So it's dried up. Any income you had, if you were trying to offset expenses, that went out the window, which I actually think that's why I think that's going to be the biggest play in this market. You had a whole bunch of people that bought wanting to supplement part of that cost to be able to come here and use it in Waikiki, and they can't do it now. The other aspect that added to that was the transient accommodations bill that totally, I don't want to say it changed the landscape, because the funny thing is it didn't really change who was allowed to do vacation rentals and not. You weren't ever allowed to do vacation rentals in the residential communities. They just didn't enforce it. And now they put on hefty fines to the tune of $1,000 to $10,000 per fine. So that really clamped it down, and it made it illegal for Airbnb and VRBO to host illegal vacation rentals. But it did change the landscape. And the intention of that bill was great. I felt not bad. It was pretty good, but the execution of it was really poor. And I went through it and read it significantly. So if anybody ever wants to talk about it, I know it in detail, and we can always, kind of work through that and understand what it is. But it's basically moved it on Oahu to resort zone properties. And there's even some questions like Diamond Head Beach Hotel on the Gold Coast has in their bylaws certain units that don't have full kitchens. You can only use it 14 days a year. Ala Moana Hotel is another one where it's actually apartment zoning. So it doesn't fall in the zoning category to be able to do short-term, vacation rentals, yet it's written in there, you as an owner, you buy it, you can't stay in here for more than 14 days. It's intended to be put into a hotel rental pool. So that bill caused some real disruption and some problems. You go on the other side of Kuhio, the Alawai side, all those properties are not resort zone. The ones on the other side are. So you had a shift in value higher to the ones on the ocean side of Kuhio because they were legal vacation rentals overnight, and you eliminated competition. And then COVID hits and you eliminated all your income. I mean, it's kind of a crazy scenario, but I think that's where the play will be.
That's interesting. So Dylan, what do you see going? That's a talk about like market dynamics flying all over the place. I mean, wow, it's crazy. So Dylan, what's kind of going on? What do you kind of see going on? Kona, Hilo, what's kind of going to be? What do you kind of see going? Where does the trend line look as what's going to be happening with short-term vacation rentals, VRBOs, Airbnbs, and things of that nature?
So here, let me start with kind of the current situation, inject some more market big philosophical dynamics. Okay, so the first thing is that we recently, at the end of last year, had some new regulations go into place, which greatly restricted where you could vacation rent. So if you were currently renting in a residential area that wasn't properly zoned, there was a process you could go through to apply for a permit, basically grandfathering you in so you could continue to do it. So they basically awarded people who were not doing the right thing and illegally renting their homes in the wrong zoning by allowing them to continue. So that was interesting to begin with. And then if you had proper zoning, you then had to go through a permitting process where they did different reviews and made sure you're paying your taxes and you had the right permits, that the building was up to snuff, and then you could then get a permit to rent and pay the county $500. So it was a way for them to generate revenue. So there's definitely a big restriction or contraction in the number of available rentals right now. So my advice to somebody looking to invest, if everything lifts and the vacationers come back, is that investing in a vacation rentable condo that has the proper zoning is a good play, because there's going to be less competition going forward. You can't just rent any old property anymore like you could in the past. And so there's going to be a big reduction in the number of available rentals. So that gets us into the big market dynamic discussion, right? And so I get it. Government response, people complain. Part of it is the owners who were irresponsible and let crazy partiers come in and disrupt neighborhoods. And then neighbors complain to their county council people or their city councilmen. And then now there's a reaction and there's regulation. So the problem with that is, clearly, going back to supply and demand, there is more demand for short-term rentals than there is availability of legal short-term rentals, right? Hotels, condos that are properly zoned. We wouldn't have people staying all over the place. These places are full all the time if there was enough legal supply for these units. And so going forward, being a tourist-based economy, I think we're definitely cutting off our nose to spite our face by restricting where you can rent. Because what happens when we reduce the number of people that can come and rent, because the hotels are all full and the legal vacation rentals are all full, so they can't go out and stay at a home anymore? Is that going to reduce the number of visitors by 20%, 30%? Those are people who spend money at restaurants, go on tours, go on fishing charters, spend money at local shops. These are people that fuel our economy. But if we restrict their ability to come here, and again, because there's going to be less supply, the cost, the hotels are smiling, right, when they do this, because now the hotels can charge, instead of start charging $200 a night, they're charging $300 a night. And at some point, we're going to price people out of the market for their ability to come here. And because of that, they're not going to spend the rest of their money in our local economies that rely on it. So over the long term, definitely a good thing if you're an owner of a legal vacation rental. I think there's going to be more demand as long as people can continue to fly here in the future. But what that larger effect is on our economy, I think is yet to be seen. And that goes back to government. It is almost impossible, in the Big Island anyway, to build a new resort or condominium complex. The regulations now, the environmental impact statements, all of the different things that you got to go through almost makes it impossible from a cost standpoint to build a new resort. We haven't had a new resort built on the Big Island other than the multi-million dollar ones that Bill Gates can stay at. Normal resort for normal folks hasn't been built in 30 years because it's just so expensive now. And so we're not increasing the supply, but the demand is always going to be there, and demand continues to grow. And we're basically not allowing people to come, or going to price them out, and it could have some real big negative effects in the economy.
Scott, you want to add anything onto that?
Yeah, and Dylan hit the nail on the head, and that's why I think it's a really good play now, is because you have the short run disruption. Let's say 2 years, right, of down, tourists coming over here, and so your income stream on that Airbnb is lower. But if you look 5 years, 7 years out, or whatever, because of the restriction in the number of units that you can do in a short-term vacation rental, the long-term play is there. So you buy on the dip, essentially, is what you're looking at, where you've lost the income stream of somebody wanting to sell, and you hold for 5 to 10 years. And the demand will be so much stronger at that point because of these. And just to add, every island's transient accommodation bill is different. So the Big Island is different from Oahu. So if you're looking at multiple islands, you need to speak with someone about those specific regulations, because they aren't the same across the state.
And to Dylan's point earlier, it's not only are they different across the state and into various counties, Maui, Kauai, Big Island, et cetera, but also could be different at a condo association, the HOA rules, like you had mentioned as well, Scott. So there's all kinds of dynamics. So what I'm kind of catching out of this is, if there is an existing legal vacation rental, that's probably a solid buy. I would not be risking it though right now, as far as buying something hoping it's going to change, because the laws are kind of all over the place. And as soon as something goes to one of the city councils, God, good luck. God only knows how that sausage making thing is going to turn out, right? So I would not be risking any of that. That's really great advice. I think the one thing, I think what's going to be an interesting conflict, it's fundamentally a conflict, and we see it in Kailua, where there's a huge there's like a sort of a war between the folks that live there. The war is the ones that bought into a quiet neighborhood, they want to keep it into a quiet neighborhood, and those that bought homes with the express purpose of sort of renting them out. And to Dylan's point, renting out to crazy parties going on. And so, there's all kinds of use. There's parking issues, there's sewage issues, there's all kinds of things. And there's a lot of pushback both ways, because there's a lot of money that wants to make this happen. There's billions of dollars at stake, and where there's money, there's influence. And then there's the local residents who kind of, hey, I bought into this quiet neighborhood. I didn't buy into a vacation rental pool system. I didn't buy into a resort community. I bought into a neighborhood community, and I have my children, and I have my family here. So that's a conflict that has not been resolved yet. They've nibbled at the edge. But I think there's a conflict. Now, another element to this that to me is really interesting is going to be the whole COVID thing, right? We don't know what's going to happen. Right now, there is no visitor industry here at all. It's essentially all but shut down. And even when it opens up, there's some big question marks of how soon it's going to be before people start flying. It's related. I caught some numbers the other day from some folks I was talking to, and the carriers, the airlines, they're estimating at best they could do 60% of their normal capacity, 60%. So if you think about, full, planes being full just a few months ago, coming over here with something like 30,000 people a day, to now at most 60%, a 40% drop. You're looking at the very, very least, our industry is going to get knocked down 30 to 40% drop, which is going to really change everything. So there's all kinds of dynamics going to be flying around on that one. And God only knows what that's going to do to affect the whole vacation rental market. But I think your guys' advice is good. If you can buy into a legal vacation rental, it's probably a good buy.